Wait, do you call Taylor Swift mother?
No, I'm not.
Not that
I feel
level?
like I'm like one of the very few just like level-headed Taylor Swift fans. Like, I listen to her, I think she's good, but like, I look at these people at a concert and it's like they're seeing Jesus for like come back to life.
Come on, let's go!
Welcome to Circles Off, episode number 128. Powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook, part of the Hammer Betting Network. I am Rob Pizzola. Today, joined in studio by a familiar face. A lot of people enjoyed an episode we did with Kirk Evans a few weeks back on the state of NBA analytics. Wanted to continue that conversation a little bit today. How's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Quick turnaround.
Quick turnaround, yes. Listen, I mean, sometimes we adapt to what the people like and what they don't like. Honestly, though, when people don't like something, I tend to do more of it as well. So like and don't like it doesn't seem to make a difference. Episode number 128. Are you a jerseys guy? Like
I'm like an embarrassing level bad at knowing jersey numbers. So like I'll pull out nothing. You say a number, nothing comes to my head.
If Johnny was here, he would have immediately went with Ty Domi. Yeah. And he would have called him a Leafs legend, which he probably could be considered a Leafs legend because he fought so many times and people like respect that. Horrible player.
I think he's a Leafs legend.
Leafs legend?
I totally agree, Leafs legend. Like, if someone sees Ty Domi on the street, they know him. They're going up asking for an autograph.
It's true.
More than, like, Mikhail Grabovski.
Yes. Okay, fair enough. Leafs legend.
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson, for me, is the one that stands out, who I always hated that they called him AD, because his nickname was All Day. All Day, Adrian Peterson. But like AP is his initials, so anytime I heard AD, it was just really awkward and confusing for me. I don't know why that bothered me for so long, but every time I heard AD, I cringed a little bit inside. I can't explain why. It was like nails on a chalkboard for me, Zach.
I just assumed it was like honestly, I don't even know. That doesn't even make sense.
All day.
I knew,
all day.
like I know that was what it was, but I didn't really put together that. I don't know. That one's a bad one. That's tough.
I don't remember AD. I agree with you though. That's a dumb nickname for a guy with initials AP.
Yeah.
But I don't remember him being All Day.
No, it was AD. AD was the. Maybe I'm misremembering.
No, I think you're right.
Roger Clemens and Andy Pettit and the steroids. I misremembered type of situation. But no, I think it was AD. AD. Marshall Falk, when I was growing up, was a 28. Warwick Dunn was a 28. Buster Posey, I think, was wearing 28 at home plate when he got absolutely destroyed and changed the game of baseball forever. I got that list. Sidebar. I don't think that players should be given the green light to just destroy a catcher at home plate. Like, that never made any sense to me. As the catcher, you're just going to stand there and take a concussion while a guy tries to run you over. But they should at least be able to go through the catcher if they're trying to get to the plate.
I think there needs to be a better rule than what it is now, because it does feel like now the catcher has a massive advantage. Baseball's the least physical game, and then randomly every now and then a catcher would just get absolutely destroyed.
Yes.
So I think it's better now, but I don't think we found the perfect medium yet. So
the problem for me is that I think the rules as they are now are too confusing to like the average layman. You know, I'm at a Jays game earlier this year, and there's a play at the plate, and it ends up going to review because the Jays challenge. And there's my entire section, no one has any idea. They're like, oh, he blocked the plate. Oh, he got there too early. He got there too late. You can do that. You can't do that. Like, you just need to really dumb it down sometimes, or simplify it, I should say, to the point where like casuals can understand it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's too convoluted. There's so many rules in sports that are too convoluted, but that one makes no sense to me.
Well, that's because it has like was he being carried into the path? Was he already in the path? Was the ball coming in the path? And it's just like, holy fuck, how does anybody know?
Yeah, like I'm the dum-dum you're talking about here. Like, I don't watch much baseball.
Yeah.
I'll get into it when the Jays are like in the playoffs, but like if I saw blocking the plate rule, I would have no idea if it was safe or not.
I still don't. I'm the guy at the game that's like frantically Googling like MLB rules, trying to explain it to be like, no, it's good, or whatever. And then it turns out to not be good. And they're like, oh, way to go, rules expert or whatever. I'm like, I honestly don't have any idea. I have no idea. But that one is one that I really struggle with. Are there any other hockey players that are 28s?
Claude Giroux is the main one that
he
I can
plays
think
for
of right
Ottawa,
now,
so we're not gonna talk about him anymore.
Not really any off the top of my head. There's no one else.
28's a rough number, man. NBA wise, I already don't know a lot of NBA player numbers, but 28, there's nothing that immediately comes to mind. Like no star players were 28. That at least I'd be able to get.
Yeah.
I feel like we might be missing someone.
Almost certainly, yeah. There's the first five comments on this video this week are going to be like, you're an idiot. This is going to be like the most famous NBA player. Best athletes who wore 20. Ronaldo wore 28 for like, what? Doesn't he wear 7?
Yeah, I thought
Dude,
so.
I don't know about this ranker website.
Okay.
AD.
Okay, we're off to a good start because I'm happy not knowing any of these.
Yeah. Posey, there we go.
That.
Falk, okay, got him. Curtis Martin, one of the most underrated running backs of all time. Fred Taylor up there as well. These are running backs from my youth. Nolan Arenado. We don't have any hockey players here. Chris Johnson, forgot. Oh, Steve Duchesne. Steve Duchesne, as a former colleague of mine, used to call him Steve Duchesne.
Wow, yikes.
Yeah, 28's a rough number. Like,
yeah, it's rough.
This is not great.
I think we got a lot of the big ones here. Warwick Dunn as well. We got a lot of the big ones.
Oh, David Justice.
Yeah. Honestly, great name. Great sports name.
For sure.
Justice.
Yeah.
Justice.
But I think those are the big ones.
Yes.
And when we're talking about the big ones, Rob,
we're talking about Pinnacle Sportsbook. Of course, if you don't know already, we talk about Pinnacle on every single show. They are a proud sponsor here of Circles Off, but I've been betting with Pinnacle for a long time. And listen, there's going to be some topics of conversation later on in this show talking about limiting bettors and stuff like that. Pinnacle's not going to limit you. It's one of the beautiful things about betting at a sharp sportsbook. They treat every single player the same way. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for the past 25 years. And as always, if you do sign up to Pinnacle in Canada, use code HAMMER. It goes a long way in supporting us here on Circles Off and at the Hammer Betting Network. You must be 19 plus. And as always, please play responsibly. Before we talk a little bit of analytics, continue our conversation from last time, I want to remind people as well. I think I used the word criminal last time when I brought this up, but it is criminal what our view to like ratio is on this show. It's pathetic, honestly. Take 2 seconds, smash that like button down below. If you're listening in audio form, please rate and review 5 stars. Again, we want people to find this content. We want people to find it. So if you can, just take 2 seconds. It goes a long way. All right. Last time we talked was a few weeks ago, prior to the NBA season. Anything that stands out to you immediately that like has happened? Because, you know, at the start of seasons, they can always be finicky. NFL scoring was way down. We've had stuff with Major League Baseball where they changed the ball. Like, imagine that. Like anything with NBA that people need to take note of right out of the gate here?
The biggest one I would say is scoring is just, it's still going up. I thought at some point, kind of like you mentioned NFL, we'd find like an equilibrium, maybe it would start going the other way. Scoring is just completely insane in the NBA. The coaches cannot figure it out on the defensive end. Like, the players are just too good. You watch NBA games, the players are too good at basketball. Like, they are so dynamic from three. They're obviously like best athletes in the world. Scoring just continues to go up.
Now, there was years ago, obviously, we saw like the Golden State Warriors. It was the shift, like get rid of the mid-range twos. Basically, you're taking threes or you're driving the basket. Is there anything fundamentally different now? Or is it just like I guess maybe it's a product of all the players now practicing this stuff a lot more?
Yeah, well, I just think they continue to optimize offense more. Like there was still some meat on the bone for like mid-range, just optimal like shooting depth. Pace is up a little bit this year. Some teams are flying. I wouldn't say it's so much fundamental, just like kind of incremental improvements, and then the players have just kind of keep getting better and better. So, yeah, I don't know if it's like one thing. It's not like teams are shooting 3-pointers more. I think offensive rebound rate might be up a little bit. That was something that coaches were talking about a lot in the preseason, but it's not like it's so high up from this point last year. More so, I thought at some point we'd start seeing that decline back, and it doesn't look like it's going to be this season.
How much of it has to do with the fact that like it's still early in the year, so you don't get, every star player or veteran resting earlier in the year? Like, are we talking about scoring is up relative to the same period a year ago?
Yeah, so actually in the NBA, scoring typically starts down.
Interesting.
So pace starts up, but shooting is worse early in the year. So yeah, relative to this time last year, scoring's like a little bit up. It's nothing so crazy, but we're definitely not hitting a decline.
Has that impacted your betting at all in the early going?
Not so much. I would say we're pretty prepared for it, and we're pretty on top of things. So it's not like I'm hammering overs. I would say overs, unders pretty 50-50 still, but there have been times where we've been like, our numbers make the under good, but let's hold off here.
So maybe a poorly phrased question by me, but I guess what are you seeing in the market? Because, I talk about that example in baseball. I've talked about this a couple times, and it's the easy one to go to because there's like obviously fundamental change in the game, balls being juiced or like changing the balls and scoring is down. But what I noticed in the baseball seasons a lot of time was you could blindly bet like every under or every over across the league for the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season and make a killing. Like the market was actually very slow to react to those changes. With the NBA, are you seeing higher totals generally this year?
Yeah, I would say totals are definitely up from this time last year, but it's not like juice ball MLB. It's not a dramatic difference. Like I think from 2 years ago to last year, scoring was up like 7 points a game, something crazy like that. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're trending to that, but we're definitely not trending the other way. So no, definitely wouldn't advise like blind betting overs, anything like that. But maybe being a day or two where the market was a little bit behind, because there are weird like portions of the NBA season where like the first few games pace is really fast and then it tails off a little bit, and then you got to kind of find the time where that like shooting hits its stride. So like maybe a couple games, but nothing like, it's not like I think probably 50-50 between if I've been on an under or an over.
Got it. All right. So no substantial or like fundamental major changes that are impacting the betting market. Now, on the Circles Off YouTube channel here, I do some educational videos. They're catered towards more of a recreational audience, sometimes Rec Plus. Probably people who are very nuanced in sports betting will watch those and be like, I already know this stuff. Sure. So that let me preface this by saying that. I wanted to do a video on the usage of NBA analytics and like what specifically what metrics bettors should be focused on. And this video dropped on Tuesday of this week, but I don't bet a lot of NBA. I used to, but the big metrics when I was betting were like RPM, BPM, box score plus minus, like stuff that Basketball Reference had, an ESPN metric as well. And I noticed that like things have changed substantially in the span of 5 years. What was very interesting to me was I reached out to pretty much everyone that I know or communicate with frequently that originates NBA and has success betting their models. I was like, okay, what do you look at regularly? What are you accounting for? And the answers I got in response were so different from one another, where certain people stand by like one specific metric, Darko, which I'd never heard of, EPM. Some people, one was just a very basic, like, listen, you just got to be very good at projecting pace and then offensive and defensive efficiency, and you're going to be fine. And if you can do this at a player level, you're going to be great. But I'm wondering, I don't want you to like give away the secrets or anything like that, but I'm curious as to like how deep you go into this. Are they all a piece of the puzzle for you? Is there a specific metric that you stand by specifically? Just kind of talk me through this, and I can pick up on some of this. But for me, like, it's just crazy to me. I focus on NFL. I focus on NHL. Most people are looking at the exact same shit for the most part, with the exception of maybe some private data that you can acquire. NBA publicly, the feeling I get is like it's all over the place.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would say on so pace, offensive, and I feel like that's kind of a cop-out answer. Like, obviously, you need pace, offensive rating, defensive rating. Like,
right.
That's like
you need to know who didn't want to give away too much info.
Like, you need to know who's going to score more,
right?
Or, but yeah, on a player level, you're probably going to want to use a rate adjusted plus minus. I use like dunks and threes EPM, for sure. So I would say if you're betting the NBA, you need to have a good feel of how valuable every player is to some extent. Like, it's hard to build on a team model or it's hard to only operate on a team like basis because there are going to be so many games where players are out, and then how do you adjust if you don't have player level data?
Right.
So yeah, you're probably going to want to look at, some sort of rate adjusted plus minus. Darko I use, dunks and threes EPM I use for sure. And then on a team level, personally, I like building my kind of perspective on teams through 4 factors. It's not like any advanced stat by any means, but I find it's really good to kind of be able to compartmentalize each stat and think, okay, how's a team built? Are they going to be good at, offensive rebounding? Are they going to be good at defensive rebounding? And you can kind of build your player level stuff towards 4 factors and see, okay, their team X is going to be really good in this, really bad in this. How does that rate out? How important is each 4 factor?
Right.
So that's typically stuff I'm looking at.
Now, how much are you concerned with the stylistic matchup of teams when they play one another? Because this is a conversation, and I always bring it back to stuff that I know because it's just easier for me to formulate my ideas and like speak on this. But with NFL, there are people who just literally put together like power ratings of teams. And they say, okay, here's what I think home field advantage is worth. This team X plays teams Y. This should be the number on the game. I don't believe in that at all because I think you're not capturing like potentially how the strength of one team could work against a weakness of another. And I think you're missing out when you do stuff like that. Now, there are people who stand behind that and have success, to each their own. There's a million ways to bet on sports. But I would figure with NBA that especially, I don't watch a ton of NBA, but when I do, I notice sometimes like, holy shit, this team plays insanely fast. And this other team cannot prevent any sort of transition offense or anything like that. How much of that is a factor for you? Or do you think that maybe it's overblown in some capacity?
Yeah, like I would say I'm probably on the other side of your argument. I'm mostly betting, my power ratings and where, especially in the playoffs, it'll get to the point where, yeah, you need to factor in matchup a lot.
Right.
But there are so many NBA games, just even on a time factor, to also be incorporating, how do these teams match up? It's certainly something I'll look at, but I will say that the bets that I find, like, let's say I bet a 4 and it moves the wrong way to, let's say, 4.5. I would say most of the time I can think back and be like, okay, yeah, I probably missed a matchup here. Because, if you're betting the NBA, you're really trying to get a lot of volume.
Right.
So just adding, multiple hours to every day being like, all right, let's go through this matchup. How does player X match up with player Y? It would just add a lot of time to our process. But you got to look at like the main guys. If you're placing a bet, I think the Pacers and Sixers are playing today. Like Joel destroys the Pacers. They don't really have enough size. Things like that you do need to look at. But mostly I'm kind of betting my power ratings and where I make the number.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the fact that like you mentioned when the market's moving against you, oftentimes you'll find that it's because of a specific matchup. I think that's like case in point as to why I think it's probably valuable. Is that that there's someone with influential money out there that's willing to bet these types of things. Now, with everything, I think you got to take like everything with a grain of salt. I do think that there's people who like just specifically look at one aspect of a game and be like, oh, this team has a very good pass rush and this team has a bad offensive line. They're going to get killed. And they just like hone in on that one aspect and forget about everything else. But I mean, subjectively, you've played, we talked about this in the episode, right? You've played sports and stuff, not at a high level.
I'll bring it back to last episode. A lot of my friends were dying of laughter because you mentioned that I played basketball a bunch of times on the pod.
Did you not say that, or did
you? I think you took it out of nowhere. I do not remember saying it. You can look back.
We got to pull up the tape.
We'll pull up the tape. Okay. Like I play basketball, but like you would watch me play basketball and be like, I suck at basketball. Like I'm definitely not much of a basketball player, and like a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, I didn't know you were a pro basketball."
It's like Rob and I play basketball.
I play college basketball, and I could play I play solid defense now in my Tuesday night men's league and whatever.
That's like me. I try hard out there. I'm a hustle player.
I'm a fake try hard.
Oh yeah.
Like I make it seem like I'm trying a lot harder than I am. I'm a good communicator out there, but like I'm the guy that's like not fighting through screens and calling for the switch. Like a little bit of lazy defending, but it's very tactical.
Yeah, no, I think I fall in a similar boat of like I am trying hard. Like I'll go hard to win a game, but the last thing I want to do is get injured out there. So like I'm a terrible rebounder. If someone's coming at me full like down the lane, like I'm faking at them, but making sure I'm not touching them. Last thing I want is a sprained ankle or like, a hurt elbow. I have no interest in that.
I'm with you. I'm not going to be that guy that's like running a mile back down the court to try to prevent like a transition layup that the guy's going to hit 99% of the time. Like, what are we doing here? But even in, it's actually definitely not apples to apples. But even in like men's league basketball, right? I know if we play a specific team, I'm going to get like this little baseline jumper pretty regularly. I'm like, oh, this is a money matchup for me. Like amazing. Like they're not going to defend. There's some teams that play zone or whatever. And you're like, this is just a great, like you go into that game, like we're going to kill it offensively tonight. And then there's other times you play a team and you're like, even before the game, you're like, we have no hope against this team. And it's very different in the NBA because there's way more parity. Everyone is like a really good, skilled athlete. But I have to imagine that there's some guys that are like, fuck, we can really push the ball against this team and we're going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would say props, like if you're not focusing on the matchup in props, then like you're probably not winning betting props. Like you need the matchup in props. But I would say a good example of kind of what you said of you can look at it the wrong way. Like Raptors teams the last few years, when they didn't have a center, I feel like most people would look at, a Joel matchup and think, oh, like Joel's going to kill these guys.
Yep.
But the Raptors' speed really hurt Joel, and they were able to send double teams essentially every time. And I don't have the numbers in my head, but I'm pretty confident the Raptors played them quite well over the past couple seasons. In the playoffs, it got a little less so when they matched up, but I think you can add a lot of your own biases when you're trying to add in that matchup. But I certainly think if you want to bet NBA, thinking matchups is good. It's just also a challenge.
Well, so we have an NBA division of the Hammer called the Board. And one of our main personalities there, talent, is Pips, Vedran Ericic, Croatian guy. And he by no means is like the biggest NBA bettor in the world. In fact, he's very like specifically focuses on props and a lot of same game parlays. The first time I ever came across Pips' account, it looked to me like a scam Twitter account, like doing collaborations with other content creators and like this amount of likes and I'll give out picks, which is a way to generate engagement in the space nowadays. But now I watch the content every single day. And the breakdowns of the same game parlays are very rooted always in just like one aspect of the game that he thinks he's picked up well on. So I can't give us like as a specific example. Maybe a couple weeks ago, there was a same game parlay involving a Bucks game. And it was rooted around the fact that when Giannis gets the ball, this opposing coach will always send a double team on him.
For sure.
It's going to happen. He's going to get double teamed. So it was like, I'm taking Giannis under on points. I'm taking a couple other players on the court over on 3-pointers. And it was all centered around this like one, thing that 100%. He felt was not being accounted for in that line. And it honestly, I've been betting pretty much everything this guy's been giving out. And these are like some 4-to-1, 5-to-1s. And this is not to promo the board or pick and roll or anything, but like it makes a lot of sense to me that he's able to hone in on something and then just build this entire
100%
theory around that, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's an awesome way to bet props, especially like if you can bet same game parlays and win. That's like essentially the best, in my opinion, the best way to win in betting right now, because I've bet into accounts on same game parlays. They are accepting the bets faster than any other bet I've ever placed.
Right.
Like I had a winning account that was like semi-restricted. Every bet was going to trader.
Yep.
Started putting same game parlays that I thought were plus EV and definitely won on the account. After like 2xing the account, all my bets were now not going to trader.
Got it.
Just because I was putting in SGPs. So yeah, winning SGPs, just as an aside, I think is really an incredible way to win money in betting right now. But that being said, I think that's a really good way to do it. Thinking of like in the SGP algo,
yep,
they're probably not factoring in what the other team's coaching decision is. So I think that's a really good way to attack props. I think it's a bit different with sides and totals. Certainly something you could factor in, but not something that I dramatically look at for most bets I'm placing.
Got it. Yeah, I think the episode we did with Shipper as well, he talked a little bit about this in terms of like his betting habits with SGPs. And it's very nuanced because it involves, you have to have a knowledge of the sport.
For sure.
Like, you know, I hear Pips break down the games and he's very in tune with how certain coaches will play, their styles, what teams will do when they're leading, when they're trailing. And, you know, that's not something somebody can just pick up and learn overnight. But I think if you do have a very, solid foundation in a specific sport, and you can pinpoint one thing that you think is extremely likely to happen, that's obviously way more likely than the algorithm is taking into account, and then just build around that scenario, you can end up with all. It's very similar to the people who were making a ton of money with DFS correlations in the early going, right? Sure. It's like, okay, I'm in the Millionaire Maker, I'm going to play Dak Prescott as my quarterback. Well, guess what? I need to play two of his receivers as well because, you know, that's got to be the case.
For sure. I will caution, though, it's a hard game. Well, one, you know, if you're betting spreads totals, you can pretty much know if you're good or not based on how much closing you're getting, unless you're, like, really, really good. Even in props, like, you can kind of tell if the market's going against you, you're probably not that good. If the market's going with you. SGPs are really hard because you can have the right idea.
Yep.
Like, you can think, oh, these two players are negatively correlated, but the book won't know that, and the book might not know that, but they're just pricing it off at such crappy odds anyway that it's still going to be negative E. So you need to be able to know the sport, but you also need to be able to at least find a way to find a reasonable price that you can look at the price and think, okay, even if these are negatively correlated, they're not pricing in a negative correlation. So it's still not worth a bet, even if your thought process is really accurate.
Yeah, I think I don't bet a lot of SGP, so I'm speaking a little bit out of my ass here, just generally speaking. But if I were to do this process myself, I think you got to think probabilistically, just like anything else in sports betting, right? So if you think there's a 60% chance that Giannis is going to go under his points total, and you want to bet some other stuff, I would probably assign some probabilities to them before looking at the odds, or at least converting the odds to a probability and saying, you know, this makes sense, instead of just piling on backing that theory.
I for sure agree with you, but the reason that the SGPs are so hard to price is because you need to price in the correlation, right? Like, they're not independent events.
Right.
So that's kind of the whole edge is that, you know, Giannis is 60%, but when Giannis goes over, you know, Malik Beasley's going to hit 2 threes. You know, if you're saying Giannis assists, versus there are a lot of times where I think a player's under threes and over points is a good play.
Yep.
And hypothetically, you would think that a book should price that, like, should give you a really good price for that, right? Those are clearly negatively correlated.
Right.
But, like, books kind of just will give you the normal odds. And even if that is a good thought, that you could have a guy who you like they're under threes and over points, if you know, put an SGP and they just give you fair odds.
Yeah, then you're just making it a
just
EV
bet them.
bet.
Yeah, exactly. Just bet them both straight.
Right.
Like, they probably even are somewhat negatively correlated, but I probably think they're less negatively correlated than a book should be pricing them in. But you got to also be able to recognize, okay, the book isn't pricing it in, and the SGP prices get much more complicated than, like, you know, if you're parlaying 2 games, you can just kind of multiply the odds together and find what the fair price should be.
Totally understand that. For those that want to check out Pips NBA, he is on the Board NBA channel. There's a daily show called Pick and Roll every single weekday morning, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. He's usually giving out 2 to 3 bets. A lot of time same game parlays, a lot of time player props. But check that out. It's on the Board. Check that out on YouTube. We'll drop the link in the description below. And Kirk does appear on the Board once a week as well for the Board NBA podcast. So you check that out. That's more of a high-level show, looking at the league as a whole, fundamental differences on a weekly basis. I watched last week, didn't know probably half the stuff you were talking about. Got to do what I can to support. Got to do what I can to support. I want to talk a little bit about defense in modeling because we pay a lot of attention to offense in every single sport. Defensively, I talked about, offense in general, looking at different metrics. I feel like there's like a wider range of what people can look at on defense. There's some people who I talk to are like, we have no idea what we're doing when it comes to accurately pricing defense or how to incorporate that. Where do we go with defensive metrics going forwards, basically? Like, there's been sort of an evolutionary shift across major sports in trying to quantify them, but I see a lot of stuff, as I'm sure that you might, when you're looking at maybe a defensive metric that says, hey, this guy's like a top 5 defender in the league, and you're like, no. And I get that with NFL, I get that with NHL. Like, are we close to the point of being able to quantify defense? Accurately.
I'm certainly not close.
Okay.
Well, I would say in the NBA, quantifying centers defense is a lot easier. Like, rim protection stats are much more predictive. Like, the process of identifying, what a good stat is similar. You want a stat that's predictive, goes year by year. Like, a stat's probably bad if it's projecting, a player 4th best defensive player in the league, and then the next year they're like 200th.
Yeah.
They probably didn't get that dramatically worse on D. The numbers are probably just pretty noisy. But wing player D stats are a lot of either like proxy stats, where it's like how good was player X while they were on the court, or, those one-on-one metrics of like how did players shoot when they were defended by this. And those stats can be really noisy. So I wouldn't say the stats are bad. Like, our APM models, factor in defense, and like even for wing defenders like Alex Caruso, Drew Holiday, like those guys are coming up like typically top 5 defenders.
Yep.
So they're not horrible, but they're definitely not. So our APM models on the offensive side, you can factor in, it's a lot of box score stats plus, on-off stats, versus on defense, really the only defensive, box score stats you have are like steals and blocks, and those can be really easy to misinterpret. So it's definitely a way more challenging thing to get right. But yeah, we're getting there, but especially wing defense, like trying to rank out the 50th best wing defender in the league versus the 25th.
Right.
Using those stats, that's really challenging.
I think the big thing for me when I've tried to do this in sports is how much do other teammates also affect an individual's defensive impact, right? Like you used to work in hockey analytics, right? If you have a defenseman, if your defense partner is a major liability defensively, that's going to weigh
for sure.
And now you can have relative stats, and that's important to look at as well. But a lot of people just look at the general rate stats a lot of times, and that's what gets filtered to the top here. So I imagine the exact same thing happens in basketball. You get a rotation where you're playing 6 minutes with one of the worst defenders on your team. It's probably going to have some sort of impact on how your defensive numbers look.
For sure. And there's selection bias, right? Of like, if you're playing, in the NHL, if this is the, Morgan Riley, really bad defensive player, but good offensive player, they're probably going to want to pair that player with their best defensive defenseman, which is going to bring down those stats. Also in basketball and hockey, I would say as well, there's a lot of players who are on the same rotation for a lot of the time. Like if 2 players are kind of tied together, it's really hard to use relative stats if, they're playing 95% of their minutes together. Mm-hmm. It can happen in hockey as well. If you're on a line pairing with someone, for 2 straight seasons, it's hard to kind of peel back those stats.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, defense is tough. It's tough to quantify. I do feel, though, that it's a lot easier for the masses to quantify offense. Someone who can get the breakthrough on defense is going to have like a very large edge in these markets because there's so many ways to do it. And again, like talking to people I know about quantifying offense in the NBA, you get a lot of the same answers. When you get to defense, it's like, all over the place.
For sure. Yeah, I would say on a player level, on offense, you can really hone in. On defense, you can focus probably a bit more on the team level. Obviously, you need to know player value. I would say especially big men. Big men really drive a lot of defense, especially in the regular season in the NBA. Also, I'm trying to pull up the saying I heard recently that I thought was really good. The eye test is better than analytics, but analytics watches every game.
Yep.
I think that's really true for defense. Like, if you can really watch every game of a player on D, you'll really get a good feel of how good they are, but it's just impossible to get to that level of watching every player, every game, every possession.
Eye test can also be very tricky.
Sorry. It has to be caveat with you need to be an expert of the sport,
right,
and be able to remove your biases, which, those are all really hard things to do.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's challenging. You don't always get these things to match up. I'll get your thoughts on this, but last time I was really betting NBA seriously was maybe 5 to 6 years ago. And I talked about, BPM, RPM being like big metrics at that time. And I used to get into this argument all the time with my friends because Jay Crowder was like statistically at the numbers everyone was looking at, the best small forward in the league. And I'm watching him like, yeah, Jay Crowder, he's not even like, he's not even involved on like 80% of the plays are running.
Can't really dribble.
He can't do this is not possible. And the numbers say it, the numbers say it. So like, what do you do in those situations? Because I'm sure right now, you mentioned you look at EPM a lot. I'm sure there's like some things that you just vehemently disagree with. You're like, this doesn't make any sense. Do you have like an override at some point?
Yeah,
where you're, yeah,
for sure. You gotta be, because the way I think about it is if EPM was the answer, then you should just be able to have an EPM model based on dunks and threes and be able to beat the market. If you tried doing that, just literally aggregated EPM data and built a model, you would get absolutely destroyed by the market. So obviously there are things beyond EPM that you have to build in if you're going to win, because if you just built an aggregated EPM model, you would get destroyed by the market. So for sure you need an override. Like, I think the best example is Jokic defense. That's kind of the Jay Crowder right now.
Yeah.
Every year, Jokic defensive metrics and like the all-in-ones are like, have him as the best defender in the league.
Right.
And also the on-offs for Jokic are also really strong, just like raw on-offs. So I like to think about it as it's probably some signal, but you also kind of want to think about, okay, why are the numbers producing that result?
Right.
Jokic gets a lot of steals, gets a lot of... he actually doesn't get that many blocks, but he gets a lot of steals for a center. They also have typically had really bad defensive centers behind him. So the model's looking at it, obviously the model, like personified, is looking at it as, Jokic comes off and they're way worse on D, no matter who's behind them. But they kind of just so happen to have DeAndre Jordan and Thomas Bryant as their backup centers. So I definitely think you need to, if you're going to win betting, you need to be able to kind of override those numbers.
Yeah, I think that's one of the, it's a challenge, right? When you build a model that's very successful and generally is winning at a lot of things, and then you have like one or two things with certain players that just don't seem right. I'm always betting against this team. It's hard to convince yourself that it's wrong necessarily. I remember years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, first started modeling baseball, posting publicly to Twitter numbers every day. And all I was doing was using Steamer's projections. Sure. They were doing forward-looking projections, and you could just plug those into a properly, like a Monte Carlo. It was before the time that they actually had the individual like home run rates and strikeout rates or whatever. Sure. It was just like base ERAs and whatever, numbers for batters against lefties and righties. And you could just plug that in and you'd actually have, like, for me, betting overnights or early in the morning before limits went up, could have success getting good closing line value. Generally, things were going to move towards that projection system at the time. But there was probably like 5 pitchers every year where you would bet against them in every single start or on them in every single start. Dan Herron was a guy that I'll never forget. I was like always betting against Dan Herron. And then you're like, this projection is just wrong. Like, maybe it's something about him specifically where, Steamer's doing these forward-looking projections or looking at certain metrics and saying, okay, this is predictive going forwards. And it works for 99% of players. But then there's just like these outliers. And if I'm just playing these outliers, that's going to be like 40% of my volume for the year. And I fundamentally believe this is wrong. The market would still move that way, but I'll consistently lose those bets. So now I'm in the boat of like, well, I'm getting CLV. Someone else is seeing the same thing. but I believe this is wrong. I'm constantly losing. And that's like the really challenging thing about being a bettor sometimes, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, well, the getting CLV part would be tough. Like typically if I'm getting CLV, I'm leaving it unless something like really drastic is happening.
Right.
But in terms of just modeling in general, like you got to be able to look at your model and say, okay, well, what's potentially missing?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if this is losing every time, maybe that falls into the, potentially missing category. Like in baseball, I feel like from 8 years ago to now, if you look at what came in between, there's so much data that's been filled in that time. You probably were just missing that, like some of that data.
Yep. Very likely. Do you think we've overshifted with any metrics? I'll give an example of what. So when I first started modeling hockey, this is going to sound really sad, but I was modeling based off of shots in a game.
Sure.
Team level shots, not individual player level. It was just this team gets a lot of shots are very highly correlated to goals, right?
Yeah,
makes sense.
For sure.
And then I was maybe one of the first people that really started to get into Corsi and Fenwick.
Sure.
For those that don't know, Corsi is just also accounts for shots that miss the net. Fenwick also accounts for shots that have been blocked by a defender. And that was like the next wave. And I was having a lot of success doing that. And people slowly caught up to that. And then we saw this expected goals movement in hockey. And this is where things have really taken off in a weird direction for me, because expected goals is not going to, technically shots is always going to be same because there's like an official scoring for shots. Corsi and Fenwick, you might get a few like off here and there. All the expected goals models that are public are very different. There is a private expected goals model by a company called Sports Logic that sells directly to the teams that is also substantially different because they're accounting for more information, passes before the shots that are happening. But what I found is as soon as like expected goals became a thing in hockey, we've got like almost the market has gone too far now, where everyone's like, oh, this team is like killing it in expected goals or whatever. And it's like the market just always moves towards those teams regardless. Do you see that in basketball in any situation, honestly with minor hockey league experience and analytics as well? Like this is a flawed metric that people are just like staking everything on.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say I see the NBA market move towards, a certain metric more than I would think is appropriate. But I think there are a lot of like good parallels to basketball too. I think a massive problem in analytics is that people will be like, oh, well, we won 3-2 in expected goals. We should have won.
Right.
And that's end of conversation. Right. I think NBA good comparisons are like, oh, this player's terrible because when they're off, the team is really good, and when they're on, the team's really bad. But it's like, okay, it's been 10 games. Like that can be a ton of noise. It can be 3-point luck. So I think a problem in kind of every analytics movement is people go, oh, here's, what the analytics say, which is literally my least favorite expression ever.
I hate that so much, man. I hate it.
It's the worst expression.
As if two different, analytics people cannot arrive at different conclusions. It's like everything just boils down to
analytics is like a sentient
analytics
being.
Says go for it in the NFL. It's like, well, no, that the model that you're using says go for it.
Yeah.
That's completely different.
Sure. So I think the big problem is kind of people use it as a stopping point. People will look at Darko and be like, oh, okay, well, like look at these two players on a chart. Like player X is obviously better.
Right.
It's like, okay, obviously you need to look at it as a factor in your decision making. But it's not everything. Expected goals, like you can think of so many reasons why expected goals can be wrong. Like the side-to-side movement is the perfect example.
Dude, for years it was the Carolina Hurricanes. Before the Hurricanes are a really good team now, but prior to that, everyone would just be so fixated. Carolina every year is like top 3 in expected goals, and they can't score. And then you watch Carolina's games, and they're just. Like there's a lot of chances in tight. It's where the goalie's in perfect position to save people jamming it at the side of the net and in front of the net. Like there's no cross ice passes. The goalie is face on for everything. So you use expected goals, doesn't take into account the goalie position for one. Like expected goal on an open net, let's say you don't know it's an open net. Goalie went out behind the net
Yeah.
You know, he gave away the pass to a guy in front, and the guy put it into an open net. Well, all the public models think that there was a goalie in the net there.
Yeah.
And it shows it as like something that distinctly different than it actually was. There's just, it's an imperfect metric, but now it's viewed as the be all and end all. And not, what really frustrates me too is how it's used in analysis as if this is all sports too, right? We all look at metrics. We think we're all. I'm very guilty of this as well.
For sure.
By the way,
I'm very guilty.
But it's like, oh, they got to take this guy off the power play. They got to do this. It's like, well, that team has much more sophisticated numbers to work with. That's not to say that they can't make mistakes.
Yes.
But you would know a lot about this.
Well, I find that the other side of this also wildly frustrating. I think both sides just get it totally wrong. Because nothing that pisses me off more, or very little, maybe the analytics say the only one, of like teams coming out and say, oh, our data says differently.
Yeah.
Because it's such a crutch and it's so easy for these teams. They'll hide behind that SportLogic data and be like, oh, well, the SportLogic expected goals says different.
Right.
You know, I remember like Nikita Zaitsev on the Leafs.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, well, our internal stuff says differently.
Right.
Like, does it? Or are you just using it as a crutch? So I can see both sides, and I just think the public side use it too much as a stopping point of like, okay, this is the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
And the teams use it too much as, oh, we've got all this internal data, like you don't even know anything. Like, like they act like the internal data is like so much better, which I think probably is true in like baseball.
Yeah.
But in hockey, I'm not as convinced it's better.
Yeah.
The SportLogic stuff is definitely better, but I'm wary when, you know, a player's coming out as horrible in the public facing stuff that they have internals that, oh, this is actually a good player.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of this has to do nowadays with a lot of the public facing models as well that are out there. And there are some very good websites in the space that are very useful if you're looking for data, if you're, you know, looking for live in-game projections, expected goals in real time, and they're very highly trafficked. But now all of a sudden, a lot of those highly trafficked sites are putting out like win probabilities on games that are vastly different from market numbers. And it's scary because like people just bet that stuff blindly. Like Evolving Hockey is an amazing site. Very useful. I use Evolving Hockey for a lot of data. I think it's very accurate. They do a good job with the upkeep and whatever. But some people reference like these goals above replacement, like the wins above replacement, like it's the be all and end all. And it's like, dude, like you can't honestly believe that this defenseman is the most valuable in the league. Like there's obviously just it does not pass the sniff test, right?
100. Like if you can't beat a market with a subset of numbers, which like you're essentially never going to be able to with a public facing model.
Yeah.
Well, then there's more out there. You know, if they're worse at predicting who's going to win than markets are, then there's obviously more out there. So you shouldn't use it as a stopping point. You can use it as a factor.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be, you know, oh, well, like, look at this chart. This player's way better.
And I think that's where the analytics sometimes gets like a really bad rap.
For sure.
Where some people will look at just like an analytics site and they'll nitpick, and you can always find like certain situations where a player shouldn't be there or like a projection looks really wrong. But yeah, I've noticed in particular the hockey market's evolution that it is just so far towards expected goals now that it's like, you know, honestly, if you wanted to blindly bet, maybe this isn't so true this year, but last year, if you just wanted to take the Pinnacle openers and just blindly bet that without any model or whatever based off expected goals for the year, you will close well.
Interesting.
It just moves that way. But there's so many, like PDO. Like I know Brian King is the inventor of a PDO metric. Brian King is Alberta-based guy. I've interacted with him on Twitter before. Huge Baltimore Ravens fan. PDO, I don't even remember why it's called PDO. It doesn't stand for anything. I'm trying to remember what it was. It's essentially like a luck measure in hockey.
But it's super basic.
Dude, it's shooting percentage plus save percentage for a team. And the general theory is that over time it should converge to 1.
Yeah, but like what happens if you have Austin Matthews or star
if your
goalie.
goalie is Henrik Lundqvist every year for the everyone is shitting on the
they're
Rangers
so
every
lucky.
year. The Rangers are so lucky. They're PDO like this and that. It's like, dude, they have the greatest goalie who's obviously always going to have a higher than average save percentage, and like that kind of stuff was always drove me crazy. It's like a very imperfect metric, and there could be some signal for certain teams, but if you go back. Like some teams are always going to have high shooting percentages because they have, guess what, better shooters or they generate better shots. Some teams are always going to have low. And this is like just an example of a metric that I hear referenced all the time. And in some cases, it can be useful.
For sure.
It's like this team has a very high PDO. They're going to come back down to earth. If you compare it to previous season's numbers and say, yeah, you know what, guess what, nothing's fundamentally changed. It's the same goalie, same shooters. But oftentimes people use it like as if it's just like this be-all, end-all. The luck is going to change. Luck's going to run out for this team, and they just go on runs. And the Rangers, for like the last couple of years, were great examples of that. Expected goals, poor. PDO, high. Guess what? They have Igor Shesterkin, amazing goalie. You might think that maybe they'll get outplayed in a lot of games and they can still win the game. And it's like people are just dismissing the goaltending aspect of the game.
It's just luck.
Yeah, it's like they get run over every game. Okay, they have an amazing goalie in that. What do you want me to tell you?
100%. And I think it's kind of like the antithesis of like real analytics to be like, okay, here are the numbers. Like we're done now. Like you kind of always want to be learning more and advancing stuff, especially PDO. You look at it as metric, you're like, okay, yeah, there are a million things that can be wrong with this metric. So I agree. There's probably a lot of signal, especially in PDO early season. But at the same time, if you're using it as a be-all, end-all, there are just way too many flaws.
Yes. I mean, there's lots of things I can get to, and I think we overdo it sometimes. There was like a study years ago that even strength metrics for hockey are much more predictive than, power play. There's a lot more noise and penalty gives a lot, which is true. That doesn't mean that you cannot glean something from how a team is on the power play. Like this, again, easy to point these out after the fact, but I do bet this stuff as well. Edmonton Oilers last year had a historically high power play percentage. Their 5v5 numbers were not the greatest. People wanted to fade this team all the time. They're so lucky. They need the power plays to win. Guess what, people? Power plays happen in games. They're going to score like 35% of the time on these. That has an impact on the game that you have to account for. I think people just get fixated now on like the next hot new thing. There'll be something new that comes that's not expected goals. There'll be something new in NBA that's not EPM. In the NFL, it's currently like EPA and success rate, and they're starting to pick up. And there's always going to be new metrics as our way to quantify the game and measure the game, gets better with technology. But when that new thing comes, at least what I've noticed is the market grabs it, and like especially early market, people betting early, and they just run with it like it's the be-all, end-all. And I actually think that creates an opportunity a lot of times when limits go up in some of these sports to fade.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that, for any of those things, you kind of want to regress it. Like the Oilers power play, like, yeah, they probably weren't as good as, the best power play ever. But if you're regressing them to an average power play, you're going to be way more wrong than even just assuming that their power play is the best ever.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. All right. Kirk Evans in studio. We haven't done a tweets that trigger us in a very long time. I've gotten a lot of messages. Hey, Rob, what happened to that segment? What's going on? Used to really enjoy this. I mean, there's a lot of tweets that trigger me that have built up over time. And I just kind of thought to myself, yeah, what happened? Why did we stop doing that? So we're going to get back into it here. No one is safe on tweets that trigger us, including friends of the program for this week. And let's get right into it, Zach.
I don't know what we're yelling about!
I've never seen you mad.
I get peeved.
Why are you in such a bad mood?
What do you care?
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
All right, let's start it here. Feel free to chime in, Kirk, at any time, by the way. Big D sports better. Sure. If you have to put Big D in your profile, I mean, you might be overcompensating. I don't know.
I feel like it's an appropriate name for this tweet.
Yes, this is
the Twitter name and tweet fit perfectly together here.
Bam! I wiped out a lot of sins with a whale bet on the Raiders. My normal bet unit is $110. I made 2 bets totaling $1,258 on the Raiders and turned a 4-6 day into a winner. I've never been so happy as when they batted down that last Hail Mary. So 10 times a regular bet. There's some screenshots that accompany this as well. This is not something to be proud about. I can get the emotion. We've been there. I don't know if you've been there. I've been. Certainly, no one is immune to chasing losses. As a sports bettor, you got to try to bet within your limits. I really preach bankroll management. It's very important. But sometimes it's just like poker. No poker player is immune to going on tilt. There are emotions at play. Try not to do it, for one. But also, especially try not to share it if it happens after the fact.
Yeah, like if you're betting $100 and then you're so upset that you've lost that you're now betting 10x or a little more than 10x the unit size, you probably should stop betting for a bet. Like take some time off, make sure that you're okay with, he was going to be 3 and 6 on a day. 3 and 6 days are going to happen a lot, especially, no offense to Big D here, but I doubt he's a winner. So you're going to lose pretty often. If you're finding you're losing and then you're 10xing your unit size, probably should take some time off sports betting. I
mean, definitely not a winner because he didn't even get good numbers. I think he just opened the sports books that he had. But as GRP wins would say, Big D after a 4-6 day, which if you're only betting $110, by the way, he lost $220.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah. But the fact that he had to 10x his unit size makes me think that
he was
that $210 he was pretty tilted about.
Or that maybe he bet some like money line favorites and it was a lot more.
Fair.
Right? Because this is a classic. I'm trying to make all my money back.
Yes.
Not I'm trying to end up with a winning day. So maybe there was some stuff in there. But as GRP wins would say, Big D, you lost your mojo. You lost your mojo. Just stop betting.
You don't know what you're doing.
You don't know what you're doing. Take a step back. Take the week off. And honestly, don't do that every time you lose a bet. But if you're in a tilted mode, it's very likely you have lost your mojo, and maybe you should just take a step back and calm down a little bit. Big D sports bettor. All right, Pisky Positivo, friend of the program, appeared here on Circles Off. People were a big fan of the episode. Still gets a lot of playback. Thank you very much, Pisky. All right, couldn't take the BS anymore. Paid out my Bet Rivers account. I assume that means that he cashed out.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. Another criminal enterprise that severely limited my bets on all markets. ... in caps. When I was down. This will be the Ontario Sportsbook of the Week on this week's installment of the Always Bet Pod, which you can listen to, and I suggest that you check out. Here's why this rattles me. I'm so done with the limiting conversations. I'm actually really done with it. I think that this either serves one of two purposes. It's one, look at me, I'm a good bettor, I got shut down. I mean, that's really the only purpose it serves, really, because this ain't doing anything.
Yeah, no, that's kind of Bet Rivers doing their job. Even Piskies, I don't know you personally, but I'm pretty sure you're a winning bettor. You're probably betting these numbers at Bet Rivers for a reason. They were probably bad, and they did their job and were able to identify that he was probably a winner. If you want to not get limited, there are places that won't limit you. You're probably betting at Bet Rivers because those are bad numbers. I don't think that makes them a criminal enterprise. It's just kind of them doing what they do.
Kirk doing my job for me. Of course, you can bet at Pinnacle in Ontario where they will not limit you. I love Pisky. I love Hitman does this a lot. I tell him all the time. I'm like, dude, you're just. It's the same circle jerk of people retweeting this. Yeah, okay, we're all winning bettors. This is what we have to deal with. This is the landscape. I understand the frustration. Believe me, I get it. I've been in this exact same spot before. Many times. And this is not a pat on the back. Oh, look at Robbie gets... you just have to have a pulse and half a brain when it comes to sports betting to get limited. Honestly, if you line shop, you do, certain things, you're almost exclusively going to get limited in some capacity. But this is getting us nowhere.
I agree.
It was this one that was the trigger point for me, but it's it's just a little bit over the top with the complaining now.
Yeah, like I would say there is a time where you could tweet out complaining about a book limiting you if it's something like completely egregious. If you're a $50 bettor and you get limited,
Yeah.
you know, to me, tweet about that.
Yes.
Because that's pretty crazy if they're starting to limit, you know, players playing under $100. But I bet you Piskey was playing thousands of dollars into plus EV bets.
Yeah.
The trader saw it across their screen, said, yeah, okay, this one closed, this one closed, this one closed. And then they limited them. That's what they're supposed to do.
The one thing I will say, and not everyone can do this, but like try to get to a point. There's different styles of betting. If you're a top-down bettor, whatever, you do what you can, and part of what you're going to have to do is like constantly replenish accounts and whatever. But if you're a bottom-up bettor, there, like you said, there's spots where you can bet, and you can bet not whatever you want, but fair limits. Make it a priority to be able to beat those books in the long run, and you're going to be laughing. It's hard, extremely hard. I'm not saying like this difficult, but that's what the end goal should be. Then you don't have to worry about the limiting component of it. Now, the only thing that upset me more than that tweet was actually one of the responses to this tweet by Julian Skyfish at the Food Snob Frog, who I've interacted with many times before via DMs. Imagine the skills to be down at a Canby book, was the reply to this. I take very big issue with this because some of these books are now limiting on like 3 bets, 4 bets, 5 bets. I'm sorry, you can make a handful of plus EV bets and still be down at a book and get limited. So like, you know, then Sprott's Better comes in here and it turns into like a little bit of a thing. That's very unfair.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, if you're betting 5 bets into an account, the odds that it's a losing account is probably like 45%, something along those lines.
Yes.
Maybe a little less. So that's going to happen all the time.
Sure. Could be the shittiest book in the world.
Yes.
If you can place a bet at a way off market price and you can lose and you can 100%. Get limited. So a little bit upsetting there. Imagine the skills to be down at a Canby book.
You know you're in a bad spot when there's a tweet that triggers us and then
the reply
triggers even more.
Oh, there's actually like, we can go ways with this, but there's like accounts that trigger us now, DMs that trigger us. There's all sorts, like just random. There's too much that's going on. All right. Max Newberry here. I don't know who Max Newberry is. I don't believe I follow him. Handicapper at wage. Okay. Well, now it's going to look like I'm picking on people. I'm not. Again, this is not about the people. I just saw this tweet, and as a hockey bettor, I almost like fell off my chair. NHL projections go to 11-4 overall last night. NHL projections improved to 54-36 overall for all NHL totals. Season is young, but hopefully we can keep things rolling. I don't have an issue with that. It's the accompanying sheet that shows a full night of NHL. Here are the column headers. Teams, line, which is the market line, which, by the way, does not account for any VIG. No. It's just 6.5, 7, 6 for these totals. No VIG included. Some of these games were like 6.5 over minus 130. So we're just taking like the line as if there was no VIG attached to it. Then the Newberry line, which is what his total is on the game, his projected total, the line difference, the delta between the two, and then whether or not it was a play. And the play column is color-coded green and red, depending on whether he won the play or not. Now, do not do stuff like this. Do not take a raw, like, median total and just compare it to the actual. This is getting no one anywhere. I'm all for people trying to come up with their own numbers. I'd actually highly suggest doing this. So honestly, Max, as much as it's going to sound like I'm crapping on you here, which I kind of am, I applaud honestly trying to come up with something. Not enough people actually do stuff like this anymore. But you cannot use this. This is not telling you anything. Here's something that people might not know. You would obviously know this, Kirk. But if a line is 6.5 flat in a hockey game, and your projected total for that game is 6.55, that's not an overplay.
It's an underplay.
That's an underplay. This is the way distributions work in sports. First and foremost, if you are ever betting hockey, you have to do this probabilistically. If your total 6.5, the juice on the over is -120, juice on the under is +100, convert those to probabilities. The same thing when you're creating your own total on the game. You have to do this probabilistically. Don't do it like this. And definitely, if you are going to do it like this, don't victory lap it after an 11-4 night, where some of these are not even like edges. I don't want to go through this whole thing, but like actually some of these are mislabeled as an underplay that should be an overplay, or vice versa.
I'll say a couple things. So one, yeah, obviously mean, median. We all learned it in school. That's kind of the reason you're betting an under on a 6.5. The only defense I'll have for this is we don't know if he's projecting goals or projecting a line.
Yep.
And I would say that's different because
good point.
If you project 6.53 as the line, you're probably not betting the over unless you literally have the greatest model in the history of the world. But if he's projecting that's what he would make the line, then that does make sense. But if he's projecting 6.53 goals, then obviously betting the over doesn't make sense. And obviously not having any of the juice to inform us doesn't make much sense. But that would be my defense for him.
First and foremost, when you're creating a model, when anyone out there is creating a model or betting a model and they want to test this, you actually have to know what is a real edge. Like that's plain and simple, first and foremost. You have to know what a real edge is, and you actually have to be able to test it properly. If you're not doing that, then there's no point. These are not, like, again, if these are his totals that he's projecting, some of these are not actually... That line of the third one, the line in the game where it's 7 and he's projecting 7.12 and he gives himself a check mark for the over 7, that's actually an under 7.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yes.
And also he has a 6.53 that he plays over 6.5, but then 5.51 that he doesn't play the over. So it's only if he's 0.02 away from the line. But that would be my only defense, that if he's making what he thinks the books should be booking the price at, that's a different story than if he's projecting the goals.
Yes. Positive Rob, again, Max, nothing personal. Applaud you for trying. Just can't do stuff like that. Next, no friends are off limits today. Matt Peralt, who I know well, back from the days where I used to do stuff with Oddshark and meet up with him in Vegas. Well-liked within the betting community. A lot of mutual friends of mine at Sports Talk Matt on Twitter. This one sent me into like I was in another solar system when I read this. Live betting hockey is so fun when the algo is wrong. Vegas was down 2-1 with 12 minutes to play. Money line was plus 300. It's a 1-goal game. Nice way to end the night. Check mark. Now, actually, I never saw this first response from Joey Isaacs here, which is, if algo is wrong, why would you tweet it?
Wait, you didn't see this?
I didn't see the full thread. I only saw this tweet.
Did you see it, Kirk?
I see this tweet, but no, I don't think I've read the whole thread.
Oh, guys, we could go on a journey down this one.
Yeah, I see there's some responses. I bet it hit, and then tweeted, in-game algos were built for soccer. Oh, no.
I did see this. I did see this.
For soccer, not hockey. They aren't. Okay. I don't want to get into like a full breakdown of this entire thread, which I'm sure I can do. But this original tweet here, okay? First, Joey Isaacs' point is very well. If you have an edge on a live algorithm, do not share it.
It's a money pit. It would take them so long to adjust, assuming it's in like that plus 300 was super widely available.
Yes.
It would be hard to identify that you have that edge. You could bet it wherever you want.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be a thing I would not tweet for sure.
Now, furthermore, this is like a results-based analysis. I'm not the be-all, end-all when it comes to hockey. I've bet it successfully for many years. I'm not the be-all, end-all. However, this is a very fair price on this game. Typically, where you're going to find there are edges in live markets. They're few and far between, but you can often find edges in live markets by finding stuff that's not priced in. There's nothing that fundamentally changed about this game. I think it was it Vegas Philly? Do you remember this game, Zach?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Vegas Philly or whatever. There's nothing that fundamentally changed about this game where you can act on it right away and find a good price. And when I say that, I'll share an example of something that used to happen, still actually happens to some extent, but is not large enough to really like beat at scale. But when teams in the NHL pivoted to pulling their goalies earlier, believe it or not, there were several months where this was not factored into the algorithm. That I believe that the algorithm for these games was saying, if it's like a 2-goal lead in this game, we would expect a goalie pull at this. There was teams like the Minnesota Wild that started pulling their goalie with like 8 minutes left in the game. Colorado Avalanche with Patrick Waugh or whatever. They 6-7 minutes left, and you could actually bet the favorite -1.5 and the over in the game on prices where the live algo did not actually account for that. Massive edge. I'm willing to share it now because it really doesn't exist anymore. There's still some weird, wonky stuff around endgame situations. A lot of books just protect themselves by taking the number off the board inside the last 5 minutes nowadays, is what you see. Instead of just trying to fix the algorithm or like have some sort of flag of the goalies out, they just said, fuck it, take it off the board. But the algorithms, when like nothing fundamentally changes, are almost certainly not wrong with the amount of volume that's being pumped into them on a daily basis. And what's even more triggering about this one is that this exact same situation happened in the very next game. Vegas was up 2-1. Oh, sorry, down to 3-2 to the Chicago Blackhawks in the very next game. Same money line odds, very similar at the exact same point of the game. Vegas lost that game. Now, they tied it and they lost in overtime, but they lost regardless. And overtime does count when, matter towards this type of bet. So I was not, it took me a while to get over this. I like Matt. This is not a personal thing in any way, but I can assure you that these live betting algorithms are not wrong unless something fundamentally changes. Like all of a sudden, Carter Hart, Philadelphia's goalie, gets hurt in the game. He's out. The money line price is not changing. Okay, you got yourself an edge.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't bet live that much, but kind of the exactly way you're describing it of like if a fundamental game state changes, that's kind of when I'll start looking into a live, a massive weather change, an e-bug comes in, stuff like that. That's kind of easy to pick off because that's hard for an algorithm to factor in. But yeah, exactly. If it's 2-1 with 12 minutes left, it would be very unlikely the algo was wrong. And if it was, don't tweet about it.
In-play markets are imperfect. I was doing a Monday Night Football watch along this week, and James Cook fumbles for the Bills on his first carry of the game and is running off the field. And immediately I'm saying on the live stream, as are a lot of people that are in the chat over on Forward Progress, to bet Latavius Murray overs. He's the backup running back. The likelihood he'll see more time happens, especially in-game props. Like
for sure,
that's just not factored in. Like it is not, plain and simple. And you probably cash the Latavius Murray over, I think, in that quarter, if not anything. So all this stuff can be gamed in some way with the right opportunity. But when it's just a standard hockey game, we have such a huge sample. We know what the money line price was pregame, where these two teams are relative to each other. No one gets hurt. Like nothing's changed here. Nothing. So just be very, very careful when you're using like a confirmation bias because of like 1 + 300 bet that wins.
For sure.
All right. Everyone's favorite. Darren Ravel. My guy. Honestly, Ravel, I still can't believe he showed up to Bet Bash and was a part of that panel.
And when's the footage coming out?
We'll have to ask Spanky. I honestly don't know. But credit to the guy for showing up.
Wait. Did you guys see, before we go like into actual serious stuff, did you see what he tweeted out? Someone passed away the other day, and then he put out the memorabilia that he had.
That's his thing, though.
He loves doing that.
He loves his memorabilia.
It was the coach. It was the coach.
Oh, yeah, it was a Knight.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he put out a memorabilia of the fine that he was issued for assaulting a police officer in like Brazil or something. And Ravel said, "I own the fine."
He loves his. Listen, to each their own, man. I owned Pokemon cards for years. Like, that was a big Magic the Gathering cards. I was a big collector of those. He can collect whatever the hell memorabilia he wants to and tweets about it. It's his own account. I appreciate him unblocking me so I could see stuff like this, though. Ravel says, the Texans, a 3-point favorite against Tampa Bay, go up by 2, kneel down on a 2-point attempt for a chance to cover. 60% of the money at BetMGM was on the Texans side. I hate tweets like this because, like, I know he's not directly saying it.
It's the implication.
It's the implication. People who watch It's Always Sunny would know. It's the implication of what he's talking about. The way that this tweet is crafted makes it seem like there is something nefarious going on in this game. Like, God forbid they kneel by 2. BetMGM needed the Texans. Like, first of all, like, the kicker for the Texans was injured in this game. I don't know if people realize that. They were having one of their defensive
running
players.
Back.
Backup running back was kicking for them. When you go up 2, if you're going to kick the extra point in this situation, which you don't need to because there's such little time left, but if that gets blocked and somehow returned the other way, it's worth 2 points for the opposing team. It's the only scenario where they can basically give up the lead in this game. It's very reasonable. Maybe something about this being a reasonable thing for the, kneel down on a 2-point attempt so that the Bucks can't tie the game in what is like an optimal move might make it seem a little bit more kosher. But God, like, this one didn't get a lot. Got 152. How does this guy get no interaction, man? He's got 59 likes, 11 retweets, but 152,000 views. I guess it's just his followers.
He's got like 2 million followers.
Oh, jeez. Right? Yeah.
I think if you just took out the 60% of the money, then the tweet's fine. But yeah, the problem with this one too is the kneel down is just like obviously the right decision.
Yes.
Here. Very clearly.
Of course.
Why would they ever not do that?
From Darren's point of view, there's probably actually nothing like, he actually probably didn't think in his head that there's anything wrong about this.
For sure.
Right? He just tweeted it as reporting on facts. Texans 3-point favorite, fact. They go up by 2. They kneel down on a 2-point. That's a fact. 60% of the money was on the Texans. That's a fact. Like, it's informational. It's there for engagement. But it reads,
for sure,
by anyone as like, what the fuck is going on here? Game is rigged, this and that. Like, look at this response. I was on Tampa Bay. That doesn't mean anything. I'm just reading into it. But like, it's like people start to think about this stuff. People start to think. Anyways, definitely not the worst thing Ravel has ever done, but that one sent me for a loop. Shane Trail. At Shane Trail. Have we done Shane? This looks familiar. I think we've done this on tweets that trigger us before. Not this particular tweet, maybe this person. I don't know. Maybe it's withdraw early from your 401k. Take the 10% penalty and unload it all on Tyrese Maxey to win the Most Improved Player Award plus 120 via DK. Okay. I obviously know this is a joke, right?
For sure.
As does any nuanced bettor. He's not literally telling you to go withdraw from your 401k. Take a 10% penalty. Like, nuanced bettors know this is a joke. The problem is, and where I take issue with this, is that this space is full of non-nuanced bettors and people who've just taken up betting in recent years. I think back to when I was 16 and first started betting. 17, 18. If I had read something like this, I'm not actually going to go withdraw from my 401k. But I'm probably going to unload on Tyrese Maxey, especially if I think highly of Shane. I'm going to go and unload on this and bet an uncomfortable. So I think this is very irresponsible. I have no issues with I don't mind touts. I don't mind people promoting themselves. As long as it's honest and transparent, I get it. Just got to be very careful with the words nowadays.
Yeah, I also think there's an assumption of like people are gonna get it,
Yes.
but a lot of people don't, and a lot of people do like dumb things. It's a pretty like rough space, sports betting, where people lose a ton of money.
Yes.
People get addicted. So like, if you're towing the line, just don't. Just kind of get away from that.
I think it's just choose your words wisely is all I'm getting at. I have no issues with recommending a bet. Honestly, even saying you really like the bet, it's fine, whatever. But don't get to a situation where someone can misconstrue this as like being a lock, basically. Because the rec better actually does like believe in these types of things. So it seems very harmless. And again, a lot of people reading it probably wouldn't even think twice about it and be like, yeah, you know what, I'll go bet Maxi, place our normal size bet. But I can assure you that there will be people that have read this message that unloaded and played an uncomfortable amount of money because of this one particular tweet. Tyrese Maxey plus 120. Good bet or not?
No, I wouldn't bet a guy at plus 120 this early, especially there are other good contenders. He's been awesome, and the price honestly might even be a bit better than this at this point, but definitely would not take, whatever that is, 45% expected prob. Like, he could get hurt.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's 45.5%. What's the probability of like a player missing significant time in an NBA season?
And also, if you miss 17 games,
you're not eligible.
You're not eligible this year. I'm like 95% sure that's true for most improved as well. So, yeah, just a plus 120. And there are other like very legitimate contenders for this award. So I'm not laying plus 120 on Tyrese Maxey.
All right. That's it for Tweets That Trigger Us this week. I have a feeling this segment will be regular again at some point.
It should be.
I forgot how much I'm reliving the, like, for people that don't know the process on these, basically a lot of these get sent to me. I don't follow a lot of these people, and they get DM'd either to the Circles Off account or to me directly at Pizzola on Twitter. You can continue doing that. Some of them go into the comments on previous YouTube videos, which we see. But basically, anytime I see something that makes me unstable in real time on Twitter, I do make a note of it, and then we revisit them. And
I got a submission. If we want to go on the positive side, we just did Tweets That Trigger Us.
Sure.
I got a submission. We won't play it here now because I don't have it the access to it. But if you haven't, GRP wins Twitter. The video in the McDonald's. That's tweet of like 2023 for me so far. The thought that went into that.
Can you explain it a little bit more for people that don't know?
So GRP loses his, I think he lost Seattle -6.
He did. I was also on that game.
Yeah, so then he goes to...
Two sharks.
So then he goes to McDonald's, and effectively the video is that now he has to eat at McDonald's because he's lost this Seattle -6 bet.
Lost his mojo.
Lost his mojo. And then he keeps saying like how terrible the meal is and just eating it on camera and saying how bad the meal is. That's my tweet of the month. It's
really the year of GRP. He's popping off. He was.
up.
What were the odds on him
up.
appearing on Spanky's podcast? That had to be someone's cashing in 100-1 ticket there.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
If you corner the comeback player of the year market like him,
he does hold the best positions in the country.
Strongest
the exact same position as him, and I always see him tweeting about it, and I'm like, you know what? Me and you. And I'm very nervous about Josh Dobbs at this point too.
I mean, I almost feel like this is a little bit early, but I kind of feel there was only one or two books that were offering Kyler Murray. Guy came back from ACL injury mid-season. Aaron Rodgers has a chance to come back. Position's going to go to Hamlin. Played on Monday Night Football,
even though he was tackle last night.
Even though he was the 12th man on the field, the penalty that cost him the game. He's now played, so it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to beat a guy that died on the field and is playing the following year. So
for sure.
That's that. But we will do more of this going forwards. I didn't come prepared with a plus EV and minus EV this week, but Zach, you got anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, so minus
Big
EV.
bomb bangers.
Oh. I was accidentally.
You accidentally hit the switch there. Yeah.
Minus EV would be getting a new suit, which I did last year, and then immediately after deciding that you're going to take a serious approach to fitness and eating. Last year, I was like 150 pounds when I got the suit, got it like tailored and everything. Had to go to an event on Friday night. Didn't think about it at all. I now weigh 165 pounds. And like, yeah, that's just not great. It worked out. It was okay, but it was tight.
Yeah.
And that was
no,
just like,
no split in the pants when you got home, though?
no, thank God.
So,
like,
so
no
you lived.
split.
You lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, but it was just like, I spent the money, got it done, got the new suit, got it tailored.
Yeah.
And then immediately, like 2 months later, was like, yeah, I'm all in on fitness and eating. And I have taken it seriously for a year now. But with that comes results, and it's negative towards my suit. Yeah.
It's true. It's very plus EV to remain at the same body weight consistently. You don't realize, like, when you have to just throw out a bunch of clothes and get a new wardrobe or anything like that, it's tough. I lost 20 pounds when I got diagnosed with diabetes in like 2 months. Miserable.
Yeah, I'm definitely a guy who's fluctuated weight. I used to be a pretty big guy, so I feel that as well. You know, the clothes.
You know the
they
clothes
go
you
out,
like
they
them.
come back.
You know
Yeah,
your
exactly.
comfort. You know certain brands that just fit for you. Like I had certain brands, just 3 or 4, where you just go and you're like, yeah, whatever I buy from here is going to fit on my shoulders well. It's gonna, and then you lose that, and you just. Anyways, I'm not saying don't better yourself and like lose weight if
you went the better way though.
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
You know,
It's
at
more
least you didn't,
about,
like, let
the
yourself
suit
go.
piece. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that.
Yes.
Yeah. I do have positive EV. This one, I feel like maybe there's some debate, so you guys can give your thoughts on it. But for me, it's ordering clothes online and then just returning the stuff that you don't want rather than going to the store to try the shit on. I think, like, as guys, for the most part, you probably don't want to spend as much time in the store, like,
Bingo.
trying things on anyways. So I needed some new pants, ordered a bunch of different styles and pairs and sizes. They all came, tried them on, kept the ones I wanted, went back with all the ones I was taking back, dropped them off, got all the money back, done. That was, like, the biggest plus EV move I could have made.
Couldn't agree more. I think once you find the brands that work for you and fit, like if I go to H&M and try on their clothes, for some reason they don't fit my body. I can't explain why, whatever. I go to certain other brands in Canada, RW and Co, whatever.
Yeah.
They fit really nice. I think this shirt's probably from there or whatever. They fit. They work well for me. So now I know that it works. I'm just ordering online. I'll do you one better, man. I don't even try them on. I just take them out of the bags. I throw them in the laundry. I know they're going to fit. Like I'm not even going to waste 5 minutes of my time trying on the clothes.
Yeah, I think you need to be the right person, because I'm ordering clothes online. If it comes wrong, I just know I'm not returning that.
Yeah.
No chance. So if I were, like, I guess you did it pretty deliberately where you were like,
Yes.
I need to return it.
Yes.
But I feel like I would get like the 3 pants that didn't fit me and then forget about it, and then the return policies, you know, a month and it's been 6. So you gotta be locked in on it. But I definitely agree that's plus EV.
Yeah, that was a good point, though, because I did do it intentionally and was like, I'm ordering too much of this. I know some of these are not going to work. Like, I'm going to be in a spot where there's going to be a bunch that have to go back. But
Yes.
Good point.
All right. You got any?
Yeah, so my plus EV, I'm going steel manning arguments.
Okay.
I mention it on Twitter all the time. I love a good steel man. So if you're unfamiliar with what a steel manning an argument is essentially arguing the best side of the opposing argument that you're in. So I find so many people nowadays just kind of speak in half truths and only argue their side. And at this point, like if I listen to someone and they're just kind of only talking about their side and make it seem like it's so obvious, I just kind of dismiss it. But steel manning, if I watch you and you have steel man the other side of an argument really well, but you still believe your side is more correct, I'll put so much more credence into your argument. And then also, for me, when I'm looking at anything, and I think something's like this, you know, I think Tyrese Maxey is good value at plus 120. Okay, well, steel man the other side. Maybe Alperen Şengün's a good bet. You know, argue the other side of what you think to make sure that your kind of thought process is appropriate and there's not anything you're missing.
Or that you cover all bases and you can go back after the fact and say, well, I didn't say for sure that my side was correct.
Yeah,
I also argued this, right?
Yes,
You provide the documents. All right, I like that. Minus EV?
Minus EV is like shitting on people who for liking things. I feel like this is super common.
Like Johnny shitting on Zach for having stickers on his laptop. He likes stickers, man.
Yeah,
What are you
exactly.
gonna-
Like-
let the guy like his stickers.
Yeah, exactly. You like stickers? That's cool. Who cares? Like, why? It's such a weird thing of like people like things, and then people find like a lot of like I don't know what it is, like happiness, joy for shitting on it. Like, who cares if you know you like
Dude,
like
I'm
whatever
with you, man.
Pokemon cards?
I'm
you
with
know,
you.
if you love Pokemon cards, that's cool. Support people who like Pokemon
Agreed.
cards.
Everybody, as long as it's like within the law, and like there's certain we draw the line at some points where some people might be
I
into
didn't go
stuff
there.
that's not like I don't want to get to those, but like the thing I see nowadays is like the football fans that just like hate the people that listen to Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
It's like, dude,
That-
why do you
this
care?
is exactly where I got
Why
this
do you
point
care?
from.
Like, I don't listen to Taylor Swift. I we've established I can maybe name like 2 or 3 of her songs. I've probably heard like a handful. Sorry, Diggs, to break your heart, but like, who cares if people
For sure.
like that?
I'm actually kind of pissed that Diggs cornered the market of Taylor Swift fan sports better.
Right.
Like, I'm a big Taylor Swift guy.
Yeah,
She's great.
sure.
Why do people, like, she's on the screen for like 2 seconds. We're like, she's running the NFL.
Yeah.
Who cares?
It's so over the top, man. I'm with you.
Well, the other thing is like, why are people like mad that these people are now involved in the NFL? That Swifties are in the NFL. You think they're sitting there on Sunday morning like, I'm not fucking watching the NFL today because the Swifties are watching.
Dude,
Like,
I know
no,
they're
who
watching in
cares?
some other location.
Yeah.
I hate this now.
If you're
who
if you're a
cares?
better, it's all more dead money coming into this space,
exactly.
man.
Exactly.
Bring all the Swifty betters into the market. Of course,
Yes.
that's only going to help the sharps. No, I honestly don't care. Like I never got this. I'm not a judgmental person, and that's just who I am. But yeah, do whatever the hell you want, man. Like some people are go over the top with this shit. It's really
Totally
crazy.
agree.
Wait, do you call Taylor Swift mother?
No, I'm not.
Not that
I feel
level?
like I'm like one of the very few just like level-headed Taylor Swift fans. Like, I listen to her, I think she's good, but like, I look at these people at a concert and it's like they're seeing Jesus for like come back to life. Like,
Wearing diapers and
Have you never been enough of a fanboy for anything though? There's got to be something you were like super passionate about.
like sports, I
Yeah, I
guess.
guess
Like
sports.
I've definitely freaked out.
Yeah.
Over a few.
Like you
sports
met
games in my
Vince
day.
Carter and you couldn't speak or something like that. You
No, I
like
don't
you're
know.
in
I don't
awe.
know about that, but like I'll watch, the Leafs in the playoffs and like break things if things go bad.
Got it. All right. So
we'll have to
maybe
do watch along with them.
yeah, we'll have to do Leafs watching. Nobody can see me watch a Leafs game. It cannot happen.
Moretto made people watch me.
Yeah, that's tough. I do like really weird, quirky shit when it gets to the playoffs, where like I have to be in the same spot where they won. When things are not going well, I pet my dog. I feel like that's somehow changing things.
Yeah.
Like I feel just better when
sure.
when I've pet him and he's happy, and I feel like that's gonna just bring up the
Positive
spirits.
vibes. The vibes are
The
high.
vibes are high. So I do weird stuff like
I've
that.
got a weird one. I get ripped apart for this. I like my superstition is I always have to finish a song. Like I can't. I think it's bad luck if I stop the song in the middle. I got to get to the end of it. And massive pet peeve when people are just like always switching songs out of parties.
Dude,
or
I
something.
cannot handle that. Sometimes I'm
I
on like
hate that.
in the summer, we're at the cottage, a bunch of friends, we're on the lake, songs playing. After like a minute, somebody skips. It's like, dude, just let it
go.
play, man. Let it play. I don't listen to individual songs. I listen to full albums.
Oh really?
It's very weird, but I cannot. Even if I'm going to listen to music at my desk over the course of the day, if I'm only going to be there for 10 minutes, I will not put on music because I feel like albums are like an experience that I have to listen to start. Even if I start an album, I listen to 20 minutes. If I get in the car and start driving, I'm picking up from the same spot that I left.
You look at it like a TV episode.
Yeah, I don't do like the Spotify playlists, and sometimes I do, but it's very rare. I just pick an album, start it, and finish it. It's crazy.
That is interesting. I've
Yeah.
never heard that.
I have a sickness.
No, well, I can't judge that my negative EP.
It's true. It's true. All right. Thank you very much, Kirk, for joining. If you do want more Kirk Evans stuff, check out the board, part of the Hammer Betting Network. Make sure that you subscribe to that channel for a bunch of good stuff. Of course, subscribe here on Circles Off. Make sure you smash that like button down below. And as always, we've appreciate all the feedback. We do read all the comments, whether you like something, hate something. Let us know. We do like to get the audience involved. One last thing. We did pick a winner for our Halloween contest. It was a costume that made me a little bit uncomfortable, but we're going to award it anyways. This one is the one. All right. Artur Dominguez, you're getting a BetStamp swag bag. We'll reach out to you through DMs, or actually you reach out to us through DMs. I want to know that you're at least still listening to this stuff before I award you with any stuff. Reach out to us through DMs here on Circles Off, and we will get you your swag bag, and hopefully we never have to see this picture again. Made me a little bit uncomfortable. This has been another episode of Circles Off, number 128. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch everyone next week. Peace.